Welcome to the 14th E2E tutorial. This is the very last one in the series of 4 VSTEP Listening tutorials. Your tutors today are Hoài Linh, Mỹ Linh, and An Quyên. We're going to be your companions in discovering the final parts of the VSTEP Listening test, Part 3. By watching this video, you'll be familiar with the format and common question types in Part 3, have a grasp of some strategies to conquer each type of question, and even pick up some fascinating tips to apply in the whole VSTEP listening test. So get ready, it's time to boost your listening score. First of all, what is there in Part 3 that we have to deal with? It's lectures, talks, or presentations. As its name suggests, in Part 3, listening to lectures, we'll listen to a talk by someone delivered to a group of people in which some specific information is presented. That information might be related to some social issue, occupation, or specialized field. There'd be 3 lectures or talks in this part. Each talk is accompanied by 5 questions, so in total, there'd be 15 questions in VSTEP Listening Part 3. One of the most important things to be noticed is that the recordings are played once only. So it's suggested that we try to stay focused on the listening section for the best result. This particular part of the VSTEP listening test is equivalent to TOEFL IBT lecture, IELTS Section 4, and FCE Part 4 listening. So apart from the materials preparing for VSTEP, you can look for preparation materials for these exams as well, for further practice. The most common question types to be seen in VSTEP Listening Part 3 are questions for main ideas, questions for details, and questions for inferences. The techniques to successfully handle each of these question types is the main focus of this lesson. Let's first begin with the question type number 1. Asking for main ideas. The main idea is the primary point or concept about a topic that the speaker wants to deliver to the audience in his or her speech, which could be conveyed either explicitly or implicitly. This kind of question is usually asked first in each lecture, in similar forms to "What is the lecture mainly about?" or "What is the main topic of the talk?" However, despite being the first question, the answer is preferably given at last because the main point covers the entire listening passage. And because we're looking for the overall idea of the talk, here are some strategies for us to find it out. Technique number 1. Eliminate choices that show details or only small portions of the listening extract. For example, look at the 4 options of the answer here. Words related to health and happiness are repeated twice to trick us, but they're not the correct answer since they are both one of the benefits sports bring about. Meanwhile, sports are mentioned in multiple aspects, such as their characteristics, advantages, prevalence, and so on. So being part of details, A, B, and D are eliminated. And being discussed throughout the sentences, C is the correct answer. Technique number 2. Based on introductory phrases to possibly have some clue. This method does not work all the time, but worth a try to figure out something related to the main topic. The introductory phrases could help us identify what the speaker is going to say next. In this example, the phrase, "a topic which we look at in great detail," plays the role of introduction into the topic of the upcoming speech. By noticing this phrase, we have the first clue that the talk would be surrounding some problem related to the family. The third strategy is to take notice of the beginning and the end of the lecture. In some talks, especially lectures, there's a chance that the speaker states right away what they're going to talk about and why at the beginning of the speech, and then have a recap of what is said at the end. However, be careful with the openings, as not everything mentioned in this part is the main topic that we're looking for. Like this. The first sentence in this talk is considered a false start, from which many people may mistake that the main topic here is the issue of domestic violence on the world scale. The general point is actually revealed in the following sentence, which is domestic violence within Vietnam. Another method to detect the main idea is to listen for highlighting phrases. In the talk, the speaker may use signal language to highlight their main point, some of which may be functional phrases, for instance, "Now let's pay attention to," or reminding statements like, "What I'm saying here is that," or "Remember." Besides, we should take notice of the statements that the speaker keeps repeating or emphasizing, as well as changes in their tone of voice or speaking speed.
Another common type of question that you may encounter in VSTEP Listening Part 3 is detailed question. These questions ask test takers about specific information that appears in the recording, and they should be familiar to you. However, the strategies to ace detailed questions may not, so let's take a look at them, shall we? First of all, it is necessary to take note of major details associated with the question. This comes in handy when you need to check if your answer is correct. Let's take a quick look at an example and try to apply the tip.
The Atlantic Ocean, named for the legendary lost island of Atlantis, has made up for the romantic origin of its name by becoming the most important commercial highway in the world, yet traces of romance continually mingle with the business of the sea.
Have you got the answer? In this case, you should quickly jot down the information about Atlantis, since it is a keyword of the question. It should look something like this. Accordingly, the correct option is D. To improve your note-taking skill, we strongly advise you to revisit the handouts from E2E's very first tutorial on VSTEP Listening. Second, always beware of paraphrasing. The questions as well as the choices are unlikely to be worded exactly the same as what the speakers say in the tape. This tip has made its debut in E2E's 5th tutorial, so don't forget to go and check it out by the link in the description. Next, listen carefully to the misspoken words or phrases which are later corrected by the speaker. For example, Denali is the highest mountain peak in the world. Oh, I'm sorry, highest in North America. Which one is the correct answer? It's B. The speaker first stated that Denali is the highest peak in the world, then corrected that it is only the top of North America. Another strategy that will make listening part 3 less of a burden to you is to pay attention to the signal expressions that identify details. What are they? They may be, for example, the reason is, on the other hand, however, I would say, and so on. Along with this, keep in mind that detailed questions do not require inference, hence, choose what the speakers actually say. Let's employ these new techniques to answer this question.
Similarly, apes have been known to make tools, for example, by breaking off branches to use as sticks. Man, however, is quite different. In fact, unique among animals because he can make a plan and then make a tool by following that plan.
What did you choose? The right answer is B. A and C are only inferences and not what was mentioned in the audio. Notice the word however. It signals the key information needed for this part. In an unfortunate case when you are unsure of the correct option, go for the choice that correlates with the main idea of the lecture. The last question type that we want to share with you is the inference question. These require you to make logical assumptions and connections by using information in the recording to come up with a new conclusion. Sounds tricky, doesn't it? But worry not, because the following tips will make them far less challenging for you. For tone or attitude questions, recognizing signposts in speeches will give you valuable clues. For example, the speaker says something like, "You want to know when it was discovered? Let me think. Probably around 1600. Can you point out the signposts? Signposts, including let me think and probably, indicate that she is uncertain of the information. Furthermore, differences in tone, intonation, and sentence stress will also reveal what the speaker feels. For instance, you like it? The speaker speaks with surprise, means that she may find the object unlikable. But if she said, you like it, happily, she is pleased that the other person takes interest in the object. To pick up all the types of indirectly addressed details, try to guess the implied meaning of the given information. For example, when a student said, I need to study more for my biology class, but my schedule is so tight. Do you think he or she has an adequate amount of time to spend revising biology? If your answer is no, you are correct. Clues expressed by certain words, word stress, intonation, or pace of what is said, again, plays an important role in helping you find the hidden information. For example, if the tone goes, oh, you've never heard of that, it means, oh, so I may need to explain more than I thought. But if it goes, oh, you have never heard of that, it expresses that I'm surprised that you have never heard of that.
Before moving on to experiencing a VSTEP Listening Part 3, how about having a look at general tips for a listening test? In the first stage, before listening, make sure you underline keywords and possibly think of paraphrases of these words as discussed in Tutorial 5, and predict the content as practiced in Tutorial 8. Second, while listening, take notes. Have you practiced applying this technique since Tutorial 1? Simultaneously, cross out incorrect answers if possible. Besides, don't depend too much on your previous knowledge on the subject. Ultimately, after listening, carefully transfer the answers to the answer sheet. For unanswered questions, make guesses instead of leaving them out. Okay, that's the tips for listening in general. Shall we apply the strategies for a listening part 3 now? You will hear a talk about learning languages once. Make sure you feel comfortable while listening. Let's begin.
I've lived in many different countries, both in Western Europe, the Middle East, and now here in Hong Kong. And during all of that time, I've learned 5 or 6 different languages, to one degree or another. I love learning languages. Not only are they important when you move to a country, I just find them fascinating. Before I came to Hong Kong, I lived in Barcelona, Spain for 10 years. And when I first arrived, the most important thing was being able to communicate with people locally. I don't attend classes. I don't think I'm particularly good in classes. I prefer to learn by just talking to people, finding out what I need to say by looking at dictionaries and listening carefully. Other things that helped me when I first moved to Spain were watching the typical kinds of programs we see every day on channels around the world. For example, the weather. This is great because they always say the same things, so you can really quickly hear the same words repeated again and again, and the pictures help, of course. Other types of program that helped me learn Spanish quickly were things like game shows, where the same thing happens. They have a catchphrase or a slogan that they repeat endlessly when contestants win or when they're called to compete. As well as that, I used to pick up the Spanish newspapers. First of all, I just accepted there was no way I was going to understand anything but 1 or 2 words. But gradually, I found that I learned lots of new things about this. I was interested because I wanted to know what was happening in the country I lived in. But I also knew that I could learn a lot of language this way. So I'd take a dictionary with me sometimes, or I'd notice a word and I'd ask other people what it meant. Anyway, by far the best practice I ever had was just talking to people in the street or in shops, where I'd rehearse in my head what I wanted to say beforehand before I went in. Usually, I made a right mess of it first of all, but after you get over the embarrassment, it's quite funny really, and people are very sympathetic and supporting in most cases. It took me a long time to develop a good level of Spanish. I lived there for 10 years, and I think I'm very fluent now. But I think for the first 2 years that I was there, it was quite a struggle to hold a decent conversation. There were always lots of words and expressions that I didn't pick up on. In particular were the colloquial expressions, idioms, that kind of thing, that people use in everyday talk, but you don't necessarily see written down.
Okay, have you got all the answer? Great. Let's check. 1C, 2B, 3C, 4C, 5A. Could you briefly explain the answer? 1. This is a detailed question you heard in Western Europe, Middle East, and now here in Hong Kong. Second, this one is a detailed question as well. As the speaker said, I prefer to learn by just talking to people, finding out what I need to say, by looking at dictionaries, and listening carefully. 3. This detailed question applies paraphrasing technique. Repetitive with the same thing happens. 4. This query asks for specific information which needs paraphrasing. I asked other people what it meant, implies. Other people explained new words. 5. This infer question requires you to choose the answer by crossing incorrected words and catch, rehearse in my head what I wanted to say beforehand. That's the end of our listening lesson. Let's review all the contents of the tutorial. Today, you've learned VSTEP Listening Part 3, Listening for Lectures. Strategies for common question types in Part 3. Tips for VSTEP listening in general. Wait! Don't forget your homework. Do a sample test of VSTEP Listening Part 3 with 3 talks or lectures provided. Along with the answers, report what strategies you've applied into doing homework. Okay, we have gone through all the VSTEP listening. We hope the tips would benefit you. Keep practicing as much as possible, will you? Goodbye, tutees!